Thank you, Nick. It's an honor to have all of our foreign nationals here also to join us. So we made it. Day 3, right? I love it. 3 days of panels, keynotes, and conversations. And hopefully not too many late nights here in Vegas. So let's start today off with something we're all a little curious about. Now, behind every headline, incidents and social media posts and all that is a team of professionals working tirelessly to uncover what happened, and more importantly, why. Safety investigations don't just solve mysteries. They actually drive improvements that make our skies safer for everyone. Now, today's panel will take us inside that process, showing us how lessons learned are transformed into actions. Please welcome our panelists: Dana Schulze, Managing Director at NTSB; Eric East, Senior Air Safety Investigator for Boeing Commercial Airplanes; Seth Myers, NATCA Air Safety Investigator, Boston Center; Matt Cabak, Senior Technical Advisor in the Office of Accident Investigation and Prevention, FAA; and our moderator this morning, Karena Marinas, Air Safety Investigations Chair for NATCA.
Thank you. Okay, so, day 3 of talking about safety, right? Do we feel like we're saying it too much? Probably not for us in aviation. It's what we do every day. It encompasses everything we do, how we behave, how we think, how we speak, right? And how we work. It's every piece of how we work in aviation. And a piece of what we do when we're trying to accomplish safety is taking deep dives into safety incidents and accidents. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. I'm going to give our panel members a minute here to let you know some of their backgrounds so that you can understand where we're all coming from. And I'd like to start with you, Dana.
Sure. Good morning, Karena. And I just want to thank you and, of course, NATCA for including this session on investigations in the event today. Obviously, communication starts in many ways, and unfortunately, as we know, it can start with an accident. And so we at NTSB, along with our partners up on the stage here, all play a role, so appreciate the conversation. So good morning. My name is Dana Schulze. I'm the Managing Director of the National Transportation Safety Board. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I've been with the NTSB about 23 years. Before coming to the board, I was in the aviation industry. I was an engineer, worked in a variety of roles that included design, some reliability and safety, and then moved to the agency early in I guess 2002. So it's been a journey, and I've had the opportunity and pleasure to work with folks from my colleagues here at FAA, NATCA, and Boeing. So I appreciate all the work that's been done, and thank everybody for joining the session today.
Thank you. Eric?
Good morning, everyone. Eric East. I work at Boeing as a Senior Air Safety Investigator. I've been with Boeing about 20 years, and I've worked in a variety of engineering roles in production support, field service, flight test, and I've been with our Air Safety Investigation team for about 10 years.
Thank you. Seth?
Good morning, everybody. Seth Myers, controller at a Boston Center. At the center, I got there about 2009. I've been on the local safety council, the facility safety rep, regional safety rep. Been coming to CFS for quite some time. And I joined Karena on the ASI committee probably I don't remember the exact year, 2015 or 14, something around those times. But thanks for everybody coming.
Thanks. Matt.
Good morning, Matt Cabak, Senior Technical Advisor in the Office of Accident Investigation and Prevention in the FAA's Aviation Safety Office. Formerly a accident investigator, air traffic investigator, and then controller at Minneapolis Center before I came to FAA. I've been in the agency about 23 years, private pilot with close to 1,000 hours, so pretty decent amount of time in all that work.
Yeah, thank you. That's really important to get us started on understanding the people who are generally involved in investigations. It's nice to know that we generally come with a lot of experience and a wide breadth of experience. Dana, let's start off with you. In the aftermath of a crash, the public often sees the headlines, doesn't really know or understand what's going on in the background, generally with an investigation. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. And I'll ask them to call up the slides.
Okay.
So talk a little bit about our process from the very early stages on launching a major investigation, and then I will follow on and talk a little bit about the party process. So the whole process really starts with our Response Operations Center in Washington, D.C. Our center is staffed with professionals 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year. And you can always get them round the clock. They are monitoring law enforcement channels. They're communicating with our other federal partners, looking at media. Of course, you see in the picture in the upper right-hand side of the slide, that is our Response Operations Center. And their role is really to be our sentry, our eyes and ears of the world around us. And as soon as they flag and identify an event that looks like it could be a significant accident, whether it be in aviation or one of the other modes that we investigate, which includes rail, pipeline, hazardous materials, marine, highway, they will immediately notify our duty officer. And at the NTSB, we have really two sides of the aviation sector cover. We have the air carrier side of it, which is our Major Investigations Division at headquarters, and then we have our regional offices. And at any given time, there's probably 5 or more NTSB investigators serving as duty officers. And as soon as they get a call from the ROC to notify them of an event, they begin the triage process. And commonly that'll look like perhaps reaching out to our partners at FAA, maybe reaching out to a manufacturer, maybe reaching out to an airport, to try to gather preliminary and triage information on the notification. And the next step then is they begin the communication process within the agency to communicate to their immediate leadership within the Office of Aviation Safety, as well as the ROC beginning the communication chain for the leadership at the agency. And so we start this decision-making process of, are we going to launch? If so, who's going to launch? Now, in a major investigation that involves an air carrier, and particularly if there's a fatality, we are most definitely going to launch, and we're likely going to launch an NTSB board member. And so our board, their role on scene when we launch is to be our spokesperson. So when we talk about communication this week, they are our primary tenant, our primary means of communication to the public. One of the things that we all know is that in the wake of an accident, there are a lot of entities and people that have a need to know right away what happened so we can get to the why. And that's really important, and our board members are the point for that for us on scene. They speak with the media, they engage with local government agencies and such to make sure that the communication flow is rapid, continuous, and comprehensive. And that is a process, let me tell you. So we're continuing this process of preparation of response, and our go-team formation and huddling for that is really the concurrently going on here. So once the duty officer starts that communication within the Office of Aviation Safety, they're going to start talking about who's going to be the investigator in charge. Who do we have on duty in addition to the duty officer? It could be the duty officer, but in many cases it's another investigator that we're going to pull forward to be the IIC. And what other technical specialties are we going to send? A lot of that is very dynamic, of course. As more information comes in, we find out more about how we might need to respond, and we start to identify and flag our other team members who are going to eventually become what we call group chairmen for different technical areas, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then we're also going to, as much as we can, start to engage with the party organizations that we already can immediately identify. FAA is always a party to our investigation by law, but we're likely going to reach out and start talking with potentially NATCA. We're going to talk with potentially Boeing or another manufacturer We're going to talk with other unions. So we're going to start that process as much as we can. It's a very compressed timeline. So our real focus once we form our team is to get to the scene. And so that's the next step in the process. So talk a little bit about organizing the structure. So now we've gotten the notification, we've triaged it, we've determined who we're going to send and how we're going to respond. Then we get to the scene. And once we get to the scene, we want to organize the structure of the investigation. It's very tempting to want to get there, get out, start looking at the accident scene, documenting, but we want to do that with structure and with a deliberateness so that we're organized. So we conduct the very first meeting on scene is the organizational meeting, and that's typically done within 24 hours of the launch. It could vary a little bit depending on the circumstances on scene. We want the whole team present, which would be the NTSB team, but also our partners, our party organizations that we're going to start to assemble. Who's not going to be part of that meeting? No lawyers and no media. And we literally have, we take the time before we kick off the meeting to go through the entire room and ensure we have no lawyers and no media. Why? Because the purpose of that investigation is solely safety. Our statute and our regulations are very clear that we do not investigate to determine blame. We investigate to improve safety, to find the probable cause and make recommendations to prevent recurrence. So we want to make sure that everybody in that room has an appropriate need to know. We're going to start sharing preliminary information in this meeting. And again, that's very dynamic too. It's going to change over time. We're also going to ask first responders to join us in this meeting. The local fire department, police, we may even have Red Cross there to start the process too of helping us with on-scene, the emotional toll, I'll say, of the on-scene work, which is very, very intense. And for anyone in the room who's worked an accident, a major accident, can appreciate it. It's very intense. We are very keen on trying to address that early and often. So those first responders are going to take a few minutes. They're going to brief us all on the hazards that are going on scene and their situation with regard to search and rescue and recovery. Very important part of the organizational meeting, particularly the on-scene hazard assessments and the mitigations. They're going to talk about water hazards. They're going to talk about wildlife hazards. They're going to talk about any other environmental situation there on scene. They're going to talk about security. It depends on where this happens. There may be heightened security. Certainly, in some areas, if it's not on airport, there's some significant issues that need to be managed with regard to controlling the perimeter of the accident. The next two phases of this organizational process are very critical, and certainly for everyone in the room who might someday join one of our investigations. Two things are going to happen. The investigator in charge is going to designate the parties to the investigation, and they're going to talk, perhaps they may designate some observers, which is a bit of an offshoot. We don't have very many of them, but sometimes we have foreign agencies that want to come in and visit, or we may have other federal partners that want to be observers. And then they're going to, the second thing they're going to do once the parties are designated is they're going to form investigative groups. And a lot of that, again, is based on preliminary information about the circumstances of the accident where we might start to organize that process. So let's talk about the party process in a little more detail. So who can be a party? So any person, government agency, or organization whose employees, functions, activities, or products might have been involved in the accident, and who has technical expertise and knowledge to share with us, can be designated as a party. It's very important for us. There's really two facets of the party identification. One is selfishly for NTSB, and that is to help us gather the facts. We want to make sure we get it right, and we want to make sure we've done it comprehensively. And so we're going to look for technical experts within your organizations who can help us do that. And that's who we want to be a party. representative for your organization if your organization has been designated as a party. Who can be a party coordinator and what is it? So a party coordinator is going to be one individual that each organization, each party organization designates to oversee their team. And the party coordinator is typically going to be the right-hand man or woman for our IIC. They're going to work very closely with our IIC throughout the investigative process. I would say that a good example of a party coordinator might be someone who is a chief pilot in a particular region, or maybe, you know, Seth, I don't want to steal your thunder, but it might be someone within a center, if there's center activity related to on the air traffic side. Who's probably not such a good candidate to be a party coordinator is somebody very high in the organization. We want someone that is placed sufficiently high within a party organization to make decisions, but not so high that they can't dedicate the next 2 years of their life to this investigation. So a vice president of safety, probably not going to be a party coordinator, not on a major investigation where it's a big organization. And then lastly, what is the party's role? As I mentioned, the fact gathering process for us, but there's a second role I want to mention, which is very critical as well. One of the reasons that the party process, I think, was really ingenious when it was developed many years ago, more than 50 plus years ago at the board, is that it allows the parties to see at the same time we see the facts that are developing, the parties see it. And that enables the party to take immediate action in the wake of a tragedy to prevent another one. So if a party identifies a deficiency in their operation, their product, some activity that they're involved in, they can take action right away. We don't have to stop and develop a safety recommendation to make safety improvement. They can do it, and we absolutely encourage that and want that. I think we hit the sweet spot whenever that's happening, and we don't have to write a recommendation because a party takes immediate action. Some of the responsibilities of a party, if you become a party representative for your organization, one of the things we're going to have you do, typically at the organizational meeting at the end, is sign this party statement of party representative. And it's really directing our investigative process, what you're going to be asked to follow, and what the repercussions are if you don't follow them. I'd like to say that in 99% of the cases, we have great success with this, that parties are very much collaborative partners with us in the process. The procedures themselves, and actually the whole investigative process, if you care to want more information on it, is covered under 49 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 831. So that maps out every aspect of the party process. 831.11 really talks about the parties in a little bit more detail than what I just went through. And then the other segment of the Code of Federal Regulations that's probably important is 831.13. Dot 13 talks about dissemination of investigative information, and that's typically the biggest risk area if you're a party representative. Where you might go awry is sharing information outside the investigation, which is not something we want. We want to speak with one voice, and we want that voice to be the NTSB so that the public has a very certain, credible awareness of the investigation, and we don't get a lot of red herrings, as we call them, developing. So you're going to sign this statement. Along with the statement comes a little packet that gives you a little detail on that Part 831 rulemaking, or our Part 831 rule. We're going to ask all the party coordinators to sign it for each organization, and then we're going to ask each group member to sign it. So I'll talk real quickly about those groups. You know, in the wake of an investigation or an accident, when we start the investigative process and we start to collect that initial information about the location of the accident, the circumstances, some early witness statements, we're going to start to form these groups. As I said, they're going to be formed and named initially at the organizational meeting. Occasionally, we might get more information as the investigation ensues on scene, and we might actually spin up another group after the org meeting. but typically most of them are going to be formed, and particularly for a major investigation, we're probably going to have anywhere from 6 to 8 or more groups formed. But they're going to be in areas like human performance and operations, maintenance, air traffic, aircraft performance, aircraft systems, aircraft structures, power plants, all the different areas of the investigation that need to inform what happened and why. And so those investigative groups, typically what we're going to do, we're going to identify an NTSB group chairman for each group. And that group chairman, in concert with the IIC, is going to ask each party organization to offer up someone who has technical expertise and knowledge in that particular group area. And we're going to qualify them. We're going to basically just ask them questions to make sure that this particular representative is going to be adequate to serve the need of the fact gathering. And then the groups are formed. So we go off to start the investigation.
So that's actually a place I'd like to pause if we could,
Sure.
because I want to hear a little bit from Eric about his role as it pertains to the investigation, because that really makes its way right into what you were discussing there. So from the manufacturer's perspective, how do you apply your technical expertise in an investigation?
Sure. Through the NTSB, as an invited party member, we not only provide technical assistance in whatever the investigation needs, but we also help identify and evaluate potential safety issues. Through our continued operational safety program and our partnership with the FAA, we evaluate any product issue that's identified during an investigation in separate and parallel safety processes, one at Boeing, one at the FAA, and ultimately determine if there is going to be a safety issue that we need to take action on, and communicate that and improve safety well before there's a final report or a safety recommendation, as Dana mentioned. Beyond that, we provide experienced investigative personnel to help out with the groups during the investigation, both from a pilot organization and from engineering organizations. And under the direction of the NTSB, we can, of course, help out with some of the activities on the group, things like recorded data analysis, animations, simulator sessions. We also help out with weather analysis. We can help out with fluid dynamics that might happen in some of those weather events. We can also help out with some longer term activities as well, like wreckage reconstruction, scientific imaging, lab work, structural analysis, those types of things.
Yeah, okay. And so, and Dana mentioned that the FAA is always part of an investigation by statute. So what kind of involvement do you generally have?
So we always have somebody from the Office of Accident Investigation and Prevention as the party coordinator for the FAA. They're the person that will coordinate all the FAA efforts. A lot of times we'll need support from aircraft certification, from air traffic, from flight standards, whatever it might be. So that person really is kind of our internal investigator in charge that helps kind of steer all of those resources.
Good. And Seth, you and I have been investigators for a while now. How would you say our role generally goes in an investigation when we're part of the air traffic control group?
Yeah, so to speak like what Eric says with Boeing, as a party to the investigation, we would come in as a subject matter expert, as Dana says, and we would be on that group as a member. We would look at the data that comes in, the interviews that we're doing. We look at not only individual or team or organizational processes or systems, but we bring to that group someone who works in that operation every single day. We work with those systems, we work with that equipment, we work with everything that we're looking at. And where something might get glossed over or missed, just to take a simple example, we've had lots of turbulence events in the last couple years that have become issues with commercial aircraft hitting turbulence, injuries, things of that nature. And you may go out, interview controllers, which the interviews are highly important to get perspective from the floor, from the operation, from flight crews, things of that nature. And something as simple as, solicitation, dissemination of PIREPs. We look at that, and in an interview, somebody says, yeah, I was getting PIREPs and I was disseminating them, and we look at not only disseminating them via frequency, but did that get out to the end user via platforms or other things? And they got 15 reports while they were working that session, but they only put one of them into eRIDS. Well, why is that? Well, somebody might say, well, they were just busy. And we would add to that and say, well, let's talk about that for a minute. Yeah, they were busy, but have you ever used an eRIDS? Let's go down to the floor, let's use an eRIDS, which, by the way, we talk about eyes off scope and distractions all the time. This eRIDS is way up here, which I got to take and I got to bring down. And now, why don't you put in a PIREP for us? And they see that it takes 45, 50 seconds to put a PIREP in. So now I'm distracted, I'm doing that. You want me to do that 20 times in my session? And that's an individual standpoint. From a team standpoint, yeah, we can put a D-side in, but are we restrained by resources? Do we have enough people? Are they doing something else? Do we not have a D-side? Why do we not have that? And then from an organizational standpoint, we have TMIs and we have capacity limitations, things of that nature, and just trying to explain those things. So we can dive deeper into something that might just seem simple, and that's what Boeing and ALPA and the FAA and everybody would bring to an organizational standpoint for like what Dana is trying to accomplish at the NTSB.
Yes. So Dana, if you'd like, I know we have another slide to continue on. Do you want to pull that one up?
Oh, sure. I just the last slide. I don't know if they can bring it up, but I can just talk to it real quick. If you become a group member or party member or party coordinator, and we certainly welcome and thank you. I know Seth and I were talking a little bit backstage that the truth is that oftentimes it's more than just work time. There's a lot involved. It's very intense. There's emotional commitment to it, frankly. But what do you need to be prepared for? You need to be prepared for that, but also be prepared to be sent anywhere. You could have to deal with a lot of weather hazards, obviously, being away from home for at least a week or more initially with the investigation, and then traveling for follow-up work. In addition, we also investigate or are the U.S. accredited representative for international major accidents. And so we often are going to launch with in that case, what we call technical advisors, is akin to a party member in the U.S. investigation. So in that case, you could go anywhere around the world. So we appreciate the time and dedication that you all make as an industry, certainly NATCA members, FAA, Boeing, airlines, other organizations that participate. It's an incredible activity, and I always say we could never do our job without all of you. So,
thank you. Matt, I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about some of the experiences you've had on investigations. If we could pass down that clicker, sorry. We're sitting in the wrong places.
Yeah, so one of the things we talk a lot about in investigations is new technologies that are coming online for us to help really start to understand what goes on in accidents and what happened. So on top of that, we also look for how do we utilize older technologies. Radar is obviously a very old technology, but one of the accidents that we worked collaboratively was a 777 that left Denver a few years ago and had a catastrophic engine failure on departure. This is one of the tools that we have that can use in partnership with the United States Air Force. We have a tool that we can look at raw radar data, and you can see here the direction of flight was from right to left, from east to west. And in the circle there's probably hard to see on a black screen here, but there's little blue dots in there. Those are primary radar returns, and they're 90 degrees perpendicular to the direction of flight. That's when the engine failed, and that's parts of the airplane coming off of it. So we were able to see where those parts were. We could get latitude, longitude from each of those dots and provide that to the investigative team, to Boeing, NTSB. Gathering those parts back up are very important to be able to understand why the engine failed and how. And this is just another one. As the airplane turned back around and came back towards Denver, it was shedding more parts. So again, this is the part where we see an azimuth distance from the radar site, and we can get latitude, longitude, plot all of those pieces, and then have the ability to actually use those lat longs to go look for those pieces where they landed and provide context back to the investigators that can really drive figuring out what happened, why the engine failed.
That's really interesting. So what I'd like to talk about a little bit, going off of that, we are seeing a lot of technology improvements, changes, right, in our investigative tools, not just in the equipment being used, but the investigative tools. Can you talk a little bit about some of your experience with that, Eric, what you've used and how things are changing and maybe some changes that are coming?
Yeah, I think the major changes that are coming is just the sheer amount of data that flows off the airplane, not just during the crash protected flight data recorders, cockpit voice recorders, but every day. Airplane health management, some of the things that are used daily from a maintenance standpoint and dispatch standpoint, those are really critical in understanding not just an event flight, but maybe understanding something that might have been pre-existing ahead of time. So I think a lot of the tools have been developed to consume that data. So really working with our airline partners and the FAA and other regulators for international investigations, harnessing that data to understand the context. It's not so much the data, but I think someone on Monday used the term the fusion of data. So it's not just the ones and zeros, but it's all of these other things together. The construct of SMS helps better understand the context for some of the large amounts of data that we're able to obtain these days.
When we were talking last week, Dana, and talking about data, we're also talking about people and the data that people can provide and some of our VSRP programs, things like that. How does the NTSB use those, or do they?
So yeah, so the people data, the reports, the voluntary reports, I think is what you're talking about, Karena.
Yes.
Critically important. Eric just said context, right? So data is data, but without that context, we can't really put true meaning to it. And I think the voluntary reporting programs and the participation in them is critically important to the safety investigation work. We certainly want to preserve the voluntary side of it and the confidentiality side of it. So we would love to use those reports to understand the scope of a problem. You know, we might identify in a particular investigation that, you know, a particular, you know, airspace approach procedure might be involved in a particular accident or somehow part of our investigative work that we're looking at, and being able to go look at rich sources of data, including the human reported data, and understand maybe what issues people have reported about that procedure previously. It can be enormously beneficial because now we can see, is this a one-off or has there been a trend over time? And I think that helps us at the NTSB and certainly hopefully the parties to be able to make more meaningful safety enhancements in a more time-efficient manner too.
I'll build on that to say that in the prevention side of the house at the FAA, we use the voluntary safety reporting information continuously. It's part of our SIS program. Those of you that are here last year, I talked about it here. That information is, as Dana says, critical to our work as well. We use that in aggregate to really dive into what's going on in the system. When an accident happens in the SIS world and the commercial aviation safety team, GA, Rotorcraft, we all look at that accident data and we see the signals that maybe led up to the accident. We go digging into that in the SIS data to see if those signals are present elsewhere in the system. If they are, as Dana said, if we can prove that there's a systemic issue, it gives us the opportunity to go look at that a little more in depth and maybe provide mitigations that will prevent it from happening again.
Oh, that's good. I did notice a good question up here. So, and I'd like to direct this to you, Matt. What happens after the NTSB makes a safety recommendation that might involve the FAA?
Yeah, so those safety recommendations come into our office in the Office of Accident Investigation and Prevention. Our office will monitor those. They'll send it out to whatever responsible party. So if it's a recommendation that comes to their traffic organization, we'll send it over to ATO and AJI to say, here's a recommendation that needs some context, needs your input. We'll do what we can with it. They'll provide us back the context to respond to that recommendation, and then we'll provide it back to the NTSB. A lot of these recommendations, it's not an easy fix. It's something that has to be done over time. So our office will continue to monitor it, continue to provide NTSB updates along the way. Same with aircraft certification or flight standards. Anywhere inside the FAA, we'll monitor those and provide that context back to NTSB.
Okay, so we've got a little bit of time here. I'd like to just kind of pose one question for all of you to take a second to answer. You know, at the end of the day, we're not just solving a puzzle, but we're really trying to pull apart what happened and what could be better. What can we do better going forward, right? Can you guys each share an example of maybe an investigation that you were a part of or a safety recommendation that you were a part of that you feel has made a difference? And we'll just go down the line, starting with Dana.
Sure. Yeah, I think, you know, it's hard to isolate it to just one, certainly, in my experience at NTSB. But I will say one example that might be interesting or good to use, and involves multiple accident investigations, some fatal, unfortunately, some incidents, but is the hazards associated with lithium-ion batteries. And we have made so much progress, I think, as an industry on this topic of safety. I'm going to say, I don't want to hex aviation safety, but you know, for a while there, we were having in-flight fires very consistently, not ending well, including accidents like UPS 6 in Dubai, which you know was tragic. And we have come a long way from then. We have not had the cadence we were seeing. You know, I think through recommendations and through industry efforts on the part of FAA and PHMSA, who actually deals with the hazmat side of lithium batteries, but improving the packaging of the batteries, how they're transported, the design, many facets. I mean, we've been able to influence so much of that, and even usage on board aircraft. So more to be done there, but that's just one example, and it's taken multiple investigations, I think, for all of us to learn how to manage that risk in a safe way.
Thank you. And we're actually running over, so I'm going to cut you guys off and say thank you to everyone for taking this time to hear what we've got to say about investigations. We do have, I'll plug the ASI committee does have a breakout later today. I hope you guys make it to that. Thank you all so much for your time and for sharing this. I think it was really interesting.